Right. Hey everybody, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, this is a stream I'm doing over on Twitch to just have a look at the new rules for Wild West Exodus. I've already got a table painted up and all the miniatures painted up and it's all ready to go, but I've yet to sort of dive into actually some of the core rules of the game. So I figured, hey, I'm going to sit here and look at this book, and if people want to sit along with me, grab yourself a drink. I'm gonna grab a Coke right here, and yeah, let's have a look through and see if anything jumps out of me. Um, yeah. So let's get ready to rock and roll. Now I do believe there's about 40 pages of rules, I think, but some of this goes into the deployment process and stuff like that. So not massively interesting. But then you've got sort of the phases. So we'll look at that. So I won't jump into things like the game overview, but we will have a look at some of these things. So forces, posses, detachments, and units. In Wild West Exodus, a force consists of one or more posses or detachments. For these and how to build your force, use the website. So that's good. Get on there. You can work out how to do it. Is this useful to people if I put the book a bit more over to one side and then maybe have the camera focus? Base contact. This means that the model in question must have their base physically touching something. Okay, great. Not all of the base of the model must be within the area. Only edge needs to be in contact. Fine. Benefits and penalties. Some units have abilities that grant others units a bonus or penalty. While within a certain range, even if only part of the multiple model unit is within the specific range, the whole unit will still gain benefit. So, only one model needs to be in range of an aura or something for that whole unit to get the benefit. That's good to know. Uses D10s. We kind of know that. Each silent D10 is increasingly higher value, ranging from ace or 1 to 10. If a roll requires you to roll a D5, roll a D10 and halve it. Pretty simple. Engaged units. Units that are within melee range of an enemy model or have an enemy model in melee range are considered to be engaged. That's pretty standard. If models in either engaged unit make a move action away from the melee range of an engaged model, that enemy may make a backstab reaction. Okay, cool. So it's a free attack essentially. Any model is engaged unit that does not have a melee model in range of a melee weapon must move towards the closest enemy model in step 1 of the resolution. Friendly fire. Friendly models cannot be nominated as the initial target of an attack. Should the target scatter by direction or use a template that touches friendly models, the hits and grit checks are resolved and cause wounds. So you can get friendly fire if you accidentally scatter something. I'm assuming thrown objects like grenades and stuff like that potentially. It resolves the same way. A player may not choose to fail a combat action once the roll to hit has been made, and so can avoid hitting their own models. Fair enough. Initial target. When a model makes an attack against an enemy unit, an initial target must be declared. The initial target is always the closest model in the target unit to the model making the action. Okay, so if you're targeting a unit, it's the closest model. Line of sight, unless specified otherwise, all models have a 360-degree line of sight. It can be imagined that they can turn and face. Yeah, so you're not worried. The miniature is just a representation of the person, and it can look in any direction, essentially. That's always good. A model can see through other models in its unit, but not see through any other models of terrain that is in the same size or larger than either the attacker or the initial target. All right, yeah, so yeah, it can't see through larger things. That's fair enough. Line of sight can be drawn to a model from any part of its base horizontally to a vertical point up to its base size in height. This prevents models for advantage of being restricted from adding height through basing or conversions. So yeah, you can't go sticking your miniature on a mountain on a base or stick it on a very high pole. that's fair enough. When imagining line of sight, trace the imaginary line from the two visible outmost points of the base of the model and check the line of sight is being checked. Great. So there's the example there that the building is blocking. It's not any models or piece of terrain that lies within the corridor of the same size or greater in height. In this chart, should be considered as providing an obscure. So he's got some level of cover here because the building is in that cone of sight. So he would get the obscured debuff, whatever you want to call it, modification. Remember, you cannot draw a line of sight to any part of the model's base, and the model cannot be made the initial target of an attack. So yeah, so if he used to move behind the house, he obviously wouldn't see him at all. When determining the majority of sight, there is a tie when counting the number of models. The worst outcome for the player completing the action is applied. Measuring. Wild hexes, measuring is made in inches. You're allowed to measure any distance in the player at any time. Measuring is always between the closest point of models or units. The model's base is included when measuring distances, but it's not up there to help the model stand up. You may measure how far weapons can shoot, how far the opponent's weapons can shoot, the distance from terrain pieces, line of sight, change the distance, anything else you can think of. After all, people in Exodus have access. Basically, measure whenever you feel like it, basically. Weapons with a range of dash have a range of base contact only. A model's weapon uses a template, so if you see a little dash on the range of a card, it means they have to be in base-to-base contact. I'm guessing things like this. Half of these resistance bases of models cannot overlap, but on occasion it may be impossible to place a model without doing that. To resolve this, models affected by the moved outside of their activation, but only by the minimum amount necessary to prevent bases from overlapping. And you must ensure that the minimum number of models are moved to accommodate the process, or otherwise known as common sense, and just fit your models. Placing and replacing models. Occasionally models are replaced or placed in new locations as a result of a rule or interaction. Placing of is considered move is not considered movement and so does not trigger a backstab reaction or other effect. There must be room for your model's base in the location of the player and the model is placed. A model cannot be placed in an impassable terrain or with its base overlapping obstacles. So that's fairly obvious. Yeah, nothing there groundbreaking. This is all pretty standard wargaming stuff. Gaming area. Yeah. So it doesn't say there isn't a fixed table size. It's basically saying experiment with different table sizes. That's good to know because I think we've now got a entire 6x4 coverage of table type stuff. So that would be nice. I could potentially play a big 6x4 game. Players use points to assemble their forces, re-rolling dice. Some rules allow you to re-roll dice. However, the same die cannot be rolled more than once. Yet, round out at times, the game will maybe require to do something where you have to do a half value, so rounding up. Scatter. Rather than affect weapons and units are always arrive on the target or intended, changing the chaos and vulgarities of conflict will cause things to scatter to an unintended position. When a rule calls for scatter, the process for determining direction is as follows. Roll a d10 and the target point moves in the direction indicated by the upwards facing point of the die. The distance will be determined by the rule or quality required for scattering. So, that is take a d10, roll it, and it landed like that. So the direction of travel would be that way because that's the upward point of the die. So yeah, so it'd be that way. That way. Yeah, okay. Well, that's fair enough. I think they use it in some other games as well. Models are designed to be mounted on a specific base. Bases are usually round, blah, 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 blah. is indicated a unit card 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 size, indicated working into terrain. See, shoot, combat action. That's all fun. Stadium bases. Some models are mounted on stadium bases. So the stadium bases are the long ones, it would seem. So the stuff that the vehicles and larger monsters come on. Instead of the regular round base, the width of these oval-shaped bases is still the same as the round base, but they are elongated as along the length. Yes, they are referred to as stadium bases and appear as 2S, 3S, 4S for rules purposes where references can be made. Round base can be considered to apply to stadium equivalent. There are additional rules that specify only to the models on stadium bases. These units can either move in a straight line directly forward or as normal, or they can make a turn using the turning template. And the turning template is, grab these will come up. I believe this is the turning template. So a bit like I guess what's the X-Wing game? So you place that at the front of the model, and that's the turn it takes. So it can't just turn on a pivot. It has to have forward momentum and then turn like a vehicle would. Turn into a unit on a stadium base can only move in a straight line backwards, but it counts as being on an even ground when it does so. A stadium base unit does not turn using the turning plate when making a free run action. Instead, it moves in the same manner as a regular round base. Traits are a series of words, so we're kind of getting what I think traits are in all games, basically keywords. Would refer to as an outlawed unit, blah blah blah. Turning template. Stadium bases models use turning templates whenever they want to move during actions. Small pips around the edge are spaced 1 inch apart, so this would be this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inch turn essentially. The template is placed at the apex of the front of the model, called the turning point, and then lined up with the travel point. The outside edge of the first segment of the turning plate must be aligned to the parallel to the side of the model that wishes to advance. Okay, fairly simple. Yeah, so there goes. Nice little diagram there. That goes at the front of the model, and then it drives around the Advance reduces the remaining distance. The model may move by 1 inch. A model can always turn less than the angle between the 2 points, but will still reduce its remaining distance by 1. If a rule refers to a model being within a certain distance to a point in the play area, then a part of that model's base must be within the given distance. That's fair enough. Example, within 3 inches means that part of the model's base must be within 3 inches of the target. That's a no-brainer. Wounded, destroyed, removed from play. If a model is a bit stuffy, I don't know why. All this talking. If a model suffers 1 or more wounds, the model is destroyed and removed from play. Certain rules and interactions applied to a model may refer to removing a model from play, or that a model is destroyed. In this case, the model is not considered to have been wounded, so any rules that might apply to it cannot be do so. Once wounded, a model will always be immediately destroyed and then removed from play. Otherwise, in game effect or rule indicates otherwise. Models that are removed from play are literally removed from play and take no further part in the action. Okay. So we've got building a force. So agree a point limit, choose a faction, choose a posse or detachment, add further units or upgrades. So pretty pretty standard stuff to building a list. So I don't think there's much to go in there. Okay, this is the thing that I was going to look at. So the autonomy of autonomy of a card. So we've got every unit model has a unit card, and the unit cards, if you've got this box, the unit cards are actually in the quick start guide. So I'll grab that as well. So we've got that. Yeah, so if you're sitting there, I mean, you would have found you've not come across this, but if you've got the quick start guide in the back of the when you built all your models, that all your unit cards are in the back here. So, and the idea is you're meant to cut these out, and then I don't know, you could laminate them, you could stick them in card sleeves, whatever you want to do. I will just laminate them. I have a laminator, so it's a pretty easy thing to do. Okay. So you've got quick. This attribute indicates the Q. So they've got this kind of like gun barrel stat line here, which is quick, limit, fight, mind, aim, and grit. On the quick, this attribute indicates the distance in inches the model may travel in a single move. Quick checks can be required to avoid being rammed by a rampaging beast or to leap a collapsing bridge over a ravine. A good one. Limits. Each unit in the game has a limit attribute. When activated, the unit may take a number of actions up to their limit rating. 3 actions are in addition to the number shown for the limit of attribute. Okay, cool. Right, this represents the model's prowess in close quarters fighting and reflects their natural reflexes as their skill with various weapons from axes, knives, and swords, all the way up to huge buzzsaws, massive hammers, or wickedly sharp cleavantors. So that's more like your melee. Mind. The attribute represents the model's strength of will, determine the self-control it means by which the malign influences of fell powers and can be mastered or resisted. Okay, so that's kind of like more like your magic type stuff. Aim. This is used for shooting. When ranged objects, weapons are or thrown objects, aim represents the model's accuracy and skill with hitting a target at distance with weapons such as pistols, crossbows, and acrid spit. Nice. Acidic spit. Grit. Grit reflects the armor constitution and any supernatural resistance the model may possess, enabling them to shrug off a successful hit against them. Should the model suffer a hit from an attack, it must make a grit check. If the check is failed, the model is considered wounded and removed from casualty of place. So, in this instance, let's have a look at someone's card. Let's have a look at the Strider Cav. So the Strider Cav has a quick of 6, a limit of 2, so that means it can take 2 actions outside of 3 actions, where some have got. So I'm guessing the higher the character, probably more actions it can take. It has a fight of 4, so it's pretty good in a fight. It has a mind of 3, so fairly low. It has a aim of 4, so it's as good as fighting as it is shooting. And it has a grit of 6. Quite tough. So then we've got special rules that apply to this unit. We've got unit name, unit trait, so this boss, lawman, human, male, martial. Unit attributes we know. Fortune, I haven't come across fortune yet. Weapon types, so the kind of classic things there. This weapon has an additional quality if a critical success is rolled. Oh, it's okay, it's got this hazardous. Here it shows a ranged weapon. Yeah. The unit base size, so it's a 1 size base. The number of models in the unit can have 1 of them, so because it's a boss, you can only have 1 of them. Additional special rules on the back of the card. The faction, which is the guessing that's Union. The unit, oh no, what's is it Law? Well, I don't know all the factions yet, but I think this is the Lawman, whatever faction they are. This unit is unique, so it's got a little unique badge. The weapon's range is 10 inches. The rate of attack of that weapon, the 3, and the piercing value. Okay, all right, cool. That's all pretty standard stuff. In wireless access, all checks are taken against a target number of 10. Doubtless, there are a range of modifiers that will come into play, but it's at the heart whenever a check is called for. Will inevitably require a D10 to be rolled. Add your relevant attribute to the added to the score. If the total score is 10 or higher, then the check was successful. Okay, so if your aim is 6, you need a 4 or more on a dice for a success. In this instance, my quick is, if I did a quick check, the guy's got a quick of 4, so I would need a 6 or more for a success. That is a nice and easy way to check. And I guess to see if you're hit, you would roll your dice and look at your grits. So if your grit's a 6, you need a 4. If you fail, you've just been hit. That is super simple. Yeah, I like that for being super simple. Critical success. When making a check, a roll of a 10 before modifiers is considered a success regardless of any penalties. If you roll a 10, straight out success. And it's the Wild West Exodus symbol, not the Ace of Spades. So if you roll a 10, instant success, and its fact is a critical success, which may trigger some additional abilities. Regardless of your attribute, that's nice, and regardless of modifiers, that's always good. So it's nice and simple there. If you get a 10, you don't have to look at anything else. You've got a critical success. Critical failure. When making a check, a natural roll of a 1 before modifiers is always considered a failure regardless of bonuses. So again, you roll a 1, don't worry about adding or removing anything. A 1 is a fail, a critical fail, and that's that. No unit, common or special rule, ability, or effect can force a critical failure to be re-rolled. Rolls that use general terms such as this unit may re-roll any fail combat checks, for example, never allow that unit to re-roll a critical fail. So a critical fail is that regardless. It can never be re-rolled. Furthermore, rolling a critical failure may trigger some additional effects on certain weapons or rules that clearly state. Yep. I mean, that's really good. That makes both critical successes and critical failures really mean something when they happen. Especially the fact that you can't ever re-roll. You know, if you get a critical failure, there is no saving you from that. That is job done. Boss units. Bosses in the World Wild Exodus come in all shapes and sizes and are heroic or devious leaders. Boss usually has the following special rules: largest, quick and the dead, target priority, and metal. So these are all keywords I'll need to go into. Commander units. Commanders are veteran combats. Commanders can lead from the front, and they usually have command, quick and the dead, target priority, and metal. See special rules. So again, base units, specialist units, troops, hands, and support units. Unit coherency. If a unit consists of 2 or more models, they must follow the rules. As the start of an action, all models within such a unit should be within the unit coherency at least one of the models. Coherency is 3 inches unless specified. So if you've got a unit of whatever cowboy, you know, the guards I've got, the bots, what are they called? Tesla bots. If I've got a unit of those, they all have to be within 3 inches of each other. If a unit has 1 or more models out of unit coherency at the start of an activation, that unit gains a disordered condition and must make a run action to regain unit coherency. If the unit regains coherency, it ceases to be disordered at the end of the activation. However, if after making a run action to regain coherency, it's still able to do so, the unit remains disordered. Well, you've really messed them up if you've not run to each other. Transport units. Units may make a get-in action during an adventure to go inside a friendly unit, and this is the transport trait. So yeah, that's good. I'm not going to worry about this too much because I don't have any transport at the moment. But this is essentially saying a transport will have a value of how much it can transport. So size 1 models. It's possible for size 2 models to be transported, but embarking purposes, each size 2 model counts as 2 size 1s, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole bunch of bits there about transporting models, but it doesn't look too hard. It looks like it's an action, and the vehicle can contain so much, and then you have to sort of get out again. Tainted units. Units with the tainted trait are referred to as tainted. Should the last model on a tainted unit be destroyed, before you remove the model from the player, make a tainted check. Tainted check is D10 plus mind, target 10 or higher. If the tainted check is failed, the model is destroyed as normal. If the tainted check is passed, the model is replaced with a single model hex beast. This hex beast will not be able to take any further actions this round. The hex beast may act normally. Oh wow, so they like explode and have a little dude come out of them. On a critical success, the model is not replaced with a hex beast and is not destroyed or removed from play either. The model is not wounded and instead gains the hunkered, disordered, and stunned condition. On a critical failure, the model is replaced with a hex beast as outlined above. However, the hex beast is under the control of the opposing player. That's a nice little touch. I like that. That's a nice little thing. I don't know if anything we've got is tainted at the moment, so I don't think I have to worry about that. So special rules here. Not going to go into those so much because they will obviously depend on what characters you've got and so on and so forth. Well, actually, maybe we could look at a couple of these because some of these have come up, haven't they? So, Quick and the Dead, size 1 or 2, size 2 models may declare it will use this rule when it is nominated as the initial target of a shoot action. The model must pass a quick check and then may immediately move up to the quick value to be placed either out of range of sight or into base contact with a piece of terrain. All dice in the shoot action declared against this model are immediately cancelled and the model gains the hunkered condition. If the model cannot move out of range or line of sight, or there's no terrain within the model's quick value, or the check is failed, the shoot action is resolved against the model as normal. This unit may not be engaged. Wow, okay. So they can, if you're trying to shoot, the way I've just read that is that I am the opposing player. I aim my guys at your leader or whoever has this Quick and the Dead trait. They are able to declare Quick and the Dead and move. They do a quick check. If that's passed, they can move that distance of the quick, see if they can get into cover or not. So that's nice. I'm not even, I don't even know how to pronounce that, but Largesi, Legacy? I don't know. While this unit is in play areas, other units in the same posse may spend fortune belonging to this unit as though it were their own. A unit with Legacy cannot share the fortune if they are hunkered. That's nice. It's a nice little bonus. Command units that are within 15 inches of a friendly commander may spend fortune belonging to this unit as though it was their own. Furthermore, this unit can use their commander's mind value whilst making morale checks. That's good. So keep your commander with your troops and you'll probably do alright. Target priority. Unless within 5 inches, this unit may not be the target of a shoot action unless it is the closest enemy unit. This rule does not apply if the model with this rule is size 3 or greater. So that stops people from, I don't know, sniping your leader if you have a bunch of troops around it. Metal, when this unit receives 1 or more wounds from a combat action, it is not destroyed, but instead, once the grit checks have been made from the action, the unit receives a disorderly condition, even if it may not be usually be disordered. Units that already have a disorderly condition or received more wounds from a combat action, then the limit attribute cannot be. What's this? Or received more wounds from a combat action than the limit attribute cannot benefit from this rule and are destroyed as normal. Okay, so it's giving your bosses, your leaders, etc., a bit more survivability. But if you take a couple of turns, so you can take them down. If a unit suffers 3 or more wounds in a single action, at the end of the action, it must make a morale check. Okay. Teamwork. Once a boss within 15 inches of this unit or commander anywhere in the player completes their action, you may immediately activate a single unit in the same posse or detachment. With this rule, this has not yet been activated this round. This is treated as a new activation. You must draw an action card and see what applies. Let me just reread that. Once a boss within 15 inches of this unit, so if they've got the teamwork trait, once the boss has been activated, within 15 inches of a unit or a commander anywhere in the player completes their action, you may immediately activate a single unit in the same posse or detachment. With this rule, that has not yet activated this round. This is treated as a new activation, so you must draw an action card. Okay, so I've activated my boss. I've got a unit within 15 inches. I can now activate them. Okay, fine. Bosses, commanders, some face specialists, and other making me tired. Sorry. Virtual units have a fortune rating. Each unit with fortune starts the adventure with a number of points of fortune equaling the number of the fortune rating. Each unit's fortune is replenished back to their fortune rating at the end of their activation. This fortune is regained after any end of activation effects have happened. If the model cannot activate, it does not replenish its fortune this round. Fortune can be spent in several ways by a unit. Each use of fortune costs a single point, unless otherwise stated. Players should feel confident in using whatever points of fortune they have available during the unit's activation. So you've always got a fortune, use it, and then just get it back again at the end of that activation. So that feels like you'd be using a lot of fortune all the time. Like I would have thought they would have fortune for the like for the whole game. But if they get, if I'm reading that right, whatever fortune they've got. So let's have a look at a card. Who's got so one of the bosses is bound to have some fortune, right? Where was fortune on the cards? How do you know how much fortune character? Where was that? Flip back a little bit. So fortune is the center section. Okay, all right. If I look at, was it Gustav? Gustav has 3 fortune. So the way I've just read that is that every activation he has, he gets to use 3 fortune. Okay, fine. I guess it depends on what a fortune could do. I'm sorry, I keep yawning. um, it should be remembered. Let's read this bit. Designers note: it should be remembered that a unit with fortune recovers its fortune back up to its initial fortune rating at the end of its own activation. Spending fortune outside their activation is likely to leave a model with less fortune to use during their activation. Yeah, that makes sense. So, if I'm being targeted by something and I use my fortune, then I won't have any actual fortune in my in its activation until the end of the activation, and then it replenishes its fortune. That's fine. Focus. A unit can spend a point of fortune during the activation phase to force a check to become focused. You cannot focus a special action. Okay. Hit the dirt. A unit can spend a fortune to immediately get the hunkered condition, regardless of whether it's in its activation or not. Okay, fine. So you can choose to basically dive to the ground, I guess. Lucky son of a gun. After failing a check, a unit may spend a point of fortune to re-roll the die, regardless of whether it was their activation or not. As mentioned before, you can never re-roll a die more than once, or re-roll a critical failure, critical success. Great, fine. Push it. A unit may spend a point of fortune as an action point and may do some multiple times during activation. First action point gained in the fashion for a unit costs 1 point of fortune per action. The second costs 2 points, and so on. So you can, let's say you draw a card with 2 actions on it. You take your 2 actions. You could then use a fortune point to do another action. You could then use 2 fortune points, and now you've used 3 to do another action. And then you could, if you had them, I doubt anyone's got it, but you could do a third action, but you'd be using 6 points at that point. So, yeah, that's what push it does. But so I'm guessing that one action is probably worth it. If you think you can take someone out, or you can do something, then pushing it's probably a good thing. Taking 1 for the team is a reaction. When a model is nominated as the initial target of a combat action as a reaction, the model may spend 1 point of fortune and select another friendly model within 3 inches of itself, which is also within range and line of sight of combat action. Selected model immediately becomes the initial target of the combat, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so you can basically throw someone in front of the attack. Veteran Instincts reaction. After this mod has been nominated as initial target of an enemy combat action, any point during the action, but before any strike or shoot checks are made, it may spend 2 fortune to immediately make a free strike or free shoot against the nominated unit. Veteran Instincts may not be used by units with the disordered condition. So someone's going. It's basically you can strike first. So that's what that sounds like. Let's say you're about to attack me. I'm going to use my Veteran Instincts to hit you first. Walk it off. A unit can spend a point of fortune during the activation to immediately remove any and all stun, disorder, and hazard conditions. Nice. If the unit is at coherency, it will immediately become disordered. Blah blah blah. Okay, right. So that's not a lot of. That's quite. I think that's quite palatable. There, we've not read anything that was too crazy. Initiative phase, action phase, and resolution phase. So we've got 3 phases in the game. Determining the initiative. Both players shuffle the action deck and draw top card. The player with the highest card. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh, reading's making me yawny. Oh, let's keep going. Draw adventure cards. Both players draw a number of adventure cards based on the agreed point limits for their force. The number of cards is the maximum number of adventure cards you can hold at any one time. At the start of each round, draw sufficient cards to bring their hand up to the card number determined by their point limit below. So 99 points or less, 3 cards. So on. What are adventure point cards? I don't think I've seen adventure point cards. Are they action cards? They must be, right? Both players draw a number of. Let me grab a deck. Let me do this. I'll try and grab a deck. I can't actually open one. Let me grab the other one. I think the other one's open. There we go. That was way easier. Okay. Oh, right. Okay. So these are the action point cards, right? And these are the adventure cards. So if you're playing a 100 points, you would draw 3 of these cards. Both players draw a number of adventure cards based on the agreed point limits for their force. This number of cards is the maximum number of adventure cards you may hold at any one time. So the maximum you can hold in a 100-point game is 3 cards. At the start of each round, players draw up sufficient cards to bring their hand up to the card determined. Reserve checks and the bigger the game, the more adventure cards you can have in your hand. Nice and easy. And then this is the way it said about, drawing the top card and comparing. So you would draw the top card to see who won the initiative, essentially there. From the beginning of the second round, players make checks to determine if any of their units held in reserve are able to join the battle. Starting with the player that has initiative, each player must make a reserve check if for one of their units that are currently held in reserve. Players should continue alternating reserve checks until all applicable units have done a check. To make a reserve check, checker player rolls a d10, adds a result to the adventure's round number, as well as half their boss or commander's mind ability. Wow, so reserve check is a d10, half your boss's mind, and the round. So it could be boss's mind is 6, so 3. I'm on round 1, so that's 4. So I need to roll a 6 to see if my reserves come on. Draw from the action deck. The player with the initiative reveals the top card of their action deck. The card drawn has an action points value. The action deck consists of 48 cards, and the action points appear. So it's either 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's one card in there with 5 action points. Crikey. The player declares which unit they intend to make an action with. More details exchange of activations. So if you draw a 5-card action card, that means you have to make 5 actions with 1 unit. The player declares which unit they intend to make an activation with. More details explains activations and actions can be found in the following. For now, it's enough to know that players activate a unit at a time. A unit may only be activated once per round, and that during their activation, a unit may make an action, special, and combat actions. Player with initiative activates first. Yeah, so it's alternate activation. So if you pull a 5, you have got 5 actions to do with 1 unit, which is a lot. Players with initiative must activate a unit that hasn't activated this round. The activator you must spend the action points indicated on the action card to make a number of actions up to their action limit. Yeah, so if you pull a 5 and the action limit on your character is 2, which is quite common from what I've seen, then those other 3 actions are wasted. So luckily, there's only 1 card in there, so hopefully you can pull it and use it on your boss or something, which I'm sure has a much higher limit. Remember, a unit with fortune recovers its fortune points back to its initial value, blah, 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 blah. Opposing faction activates a unit. Once a player with the initiative finishes their activation, the opposing player now activates a unit following the 2 steps above. Yeah, got it. Players continue to alternative activate until blah, 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 blah. Standard stuff, alternative actions. Unless you run out of stuff, then they just activate everything they've got less. Once the last action card from the deck is drawn, it's reshuffled. Yeah. And what's this? So once the last action card from the deck is drawn, I shuffle the discard pile and create a new action deck to draw from. Without looking, draw the top 3 cards and discard them face down, forming a new discard pile. This ensures that the player cannot be certain that the ratio. So when you make a new deck, you take the top 3 cards and you instantly bin them. Because so every time you take a turn, 3 more cards. Every time you get through those activation, these cards here, it's going to get 3 less each time. So eventually you'll be less and less. So you might be chucking away your 4s and 5s. Put a bit of randomness into it, which is a good idea. I like it. Resolution phase. Move unengaged models, starting with the player who has initiative. Both players take it in turns to select 1 or more units that have 1 or more models engaged by the enemy. Any unengaged models in that unit must be moved up to their quick value in inches towards a model in the enemy unit that has engaged them. This move will trigger a backstab reaction as normal if the models move into and then out of enemy range. Moved unengaged models. Ah, so this is like piling in, right? That's what I'm going to read this as. So even though only one of my models might be in melee combat, because it's part of a unit, when we start the resolution phase, they all, meld. They all pile into each other. But if it moves you out of combat with something else, that thing's going to get a reaction. That's fair enough. Discard unwanted adventure cards. Starting with the player who has the initiative, both players take it in turns to discard any number of unwanted adventure cards. Yeah, okay, so you can discard and draw back up to your yeah. Check victory conditions. Adventure cards. Adventure cards have two uses in the game. They should be kept secret until played. Adventure cards include effects for both guts and glory, either of which may be played, but not both. These cards can be played whether their criteria is met, even during the opponent's activation. Adventure cards may be played for glory once a specific objective has been achieved. The player is immediately advanced to victory points indicated on the card through a small number. Yeah, as more glory is achieved, though achieving the main objective for the adventure will provide the lion's shares of victory points in the adventures, it is possible that a player that seeks glory above all concerns might still win the battle. So let's have a look. So fill this card and discard to gain the following for this activation. One unit gains +1 fight. So these are cards you can play during your game. Yep. But it said there something about spending glory. So let's have a look. Adventure cards have two uses. Yeah, get it? These cards can be played whenever their criteria is met. So what's glory? Achieve the okay. So guts is more like more like just one-off things. Yeah, it does seem. Glory seems to be more about achieve the following at the end of their activation. If one of your boss/commander units is within 5 inches of the center of the area of play, gain a VP. Okay, yeah, so that's what that did. So this is more buffing. So for this one fight, they're going to gain +1, and then this is more like getting myself some some VPs and stuff. So really, you want the glory, but if you need it, you can use the guts. That's how I've read that. At the end of the card, from the glory is guts. The bonus provided by guts is immediately and is achieved at the expense of the glory that might otherwise have been obtained by the card. Yeah. So because you're going to play the guts, you've given up the chance to get what's on the glory. Fair enough. You may apply as many guts bonuses to a single activation as you wish. Guts can often provide a bonus for an attribute. Okay, so you can play multiple guts cards if you want, if you're really in trouble. Can provide additional action points, can be provided different action cards, blah, 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 blah. Okay, gut symbols, interrupt, restore, triggered activation. An adventure card that has the interrupt symbol on it can be played to cancel any guts effect just played by your opponent. If your opponent holds an interrupt card, they may play it to negate your card. However, you may attempt to interrupt again if you have more cards with the interrupt. All right, so you can cancel their cancel. You can interrupt their interrupt. That's a bit like Magic the Gathering. Restore. If your adventure card has the symbol on it, you may reveal this card anytime. Restore the number of fortune points on a unit if your choice back up to their fortune value. That's broken, but okay. Triggered activation. If your adventure card has the symbol on it, after making the activation, you may declare you will be making a triggered activation. You must reveal and discard the adventure card with this symbol that enables you to do so. You may then immediately activate the unit within 10 inches of the unit you just activated. That has not activated yet. Okay, so I can, a bit like the commander ability, I can activate a unit, play this card, and activate another unit within 10 inches. I have to draw a card and away I go. Alright, that seems fine. Each unit can only activate once per round. When activated, the unit may take an action. Action falls into 3 categories: move, combat, or special. Okay. Right, okay, so you can do, however, a unit carrying out the same category of action, so 2 or more move actions or shoot actions, cost 2 points for an additional time rather than the usual one. So to move, you need 3 action points. You need 1 action point for the initial move and 2 action points for the second move. So you need that 3. So if you've just pulled a 2 action point card, you can't do 2 of the same thing, and that counts for shooting and specials. A unit can spend as many action points as they have available, but may only make the number of actions equal to the limit. Yeah, so you might have action points, but your action limit is going to restrict you. This does not include free actions. Example, Belle Wilson makes a run move action from behind some barrels. The action costs her 1 action point. If Belle Wilson was to make a shoot action, it would cost her a second action point, as a shoot action is a type of combat action. However, instead, she's elected to run again. This is a move action, would cost her 2 action points to do either. Yes. So she could have shot for 1, but she moved, which cost her 2. Yeah, fine. We get it. Action cards. When activating a unit, controlling player must use an action card drawn in each phase. Action has action points value that's range 1 to 5. I think we get everything here. This is explaining the fact that you can have a card with 5 points on it, but a limit of 2, and therefore you're only going to do 2 actions, but you've got enough points to effectively do 2 moves, because 2 moves cost 3 action points, and you've got enough. You will lose the other 2 action points, sadly, but that's fine. But you could spend a fortune to then take another action. So there's that piece there. Yeah, so you could play an adventure card. So I'm just reading some of the lines here. So I've got a character. That character has a limit of 2. I've just drawn the 5 action points card. I'm like, oh, that sucks. So I'd use the first action to move, the second action to shoot. I've just used its limit. I then play a adventure card, which gives me another action. Great, I've got 3 more points I can use, so I could do another move, or I could do another shoot, or whatever, or the special. And even after that, and I've still got an action. Let's say I've still got so I do the special that cost me another action. I've still got 2 points left. I could then use a fortune point to have another action, and use those last 2 points to make a final move. So whilst you've got the limit of the character, you can use action, and you can use adventure cards and fortune to go over it, to burst over that limit. If anyone watches this back and that makes sense and it's right, let me I think it's right. I think that's right. Okay. I'm going to take a break in a minute. I'm going to read. We'll finish this one and then we'll take a break. Focused actions cost +1 action point. Provided the action is linked to an attribute, a unit may declare that the action they are about to take in their activation is focused. Focusing action cost costs 1 action point in addition. So I'm going to shoot, but I'm going to shoot focused. So that costs 2 points. And still counts as a single action. Yep, that's absolutely fine. For the duration of that action, the unit gains +2 bonus to that action. Okay, so I'm going to shoot. I'm going to make it a focused shoot. So, there's my 2 points. I'm going to do my check, and I'm going to get whatever my trait is +2. So let's say it's 6. It's now 8. I need to roll 2+ to make that a successful check. Brilliant. Easy peasy. Distance moves or check. Special actions may be focused. A special action may never be focused. Okay, fine. Example, the Countess is having a great deal of fun electrifying some low-class outlaw scum by starting her activation with a focused shoot action. At a cost of 2 action points, giving her +2 to her aim. She has drawn a 4 action point card this round, so after spending 1 for the shoot and 1 for having it focused, she has 2 action points remaining. The Countess has a limit of 3, meaning she could take further 2 actions. Hello, there was a squirrel on my window. Hello, mate. Wonder if I can. Oh, he's given up. I'd love to have moved the camera. Then he was a squirrel just there on my window, trying to get to my bird feeder. He was literally Spider-Manning it up the wall. I should. If he comes back, I will move the camera. Only someone who's watched this far might see a spidering squirrel. So where was we? Means she could take further 2 actions. The Countess chooses to make a second shoot action. However, this repeat action costs her remaining 2 action points. The Countess has now run out of action points and cannot take any further actions. Absolutely super easy, no worries. If an action is described as a free action, it means it does not cost any action points and does not count towards the limit for a unit's actions in that round. Like all actions, they usually must be taken as part of the model's activation. However, some weapon qualities in in-game effects may cause a model to take a free action outside of its activation. So there are free actions in here which don't cost points and don't count towards your limit. Right, I'm going to take a break there because we're now into moving. But I think we just went through a whole bunch of stuff. So it's an hour on the video. So I'm actually going to end the stream because this is going to go up onto YouTube. I'm going to end the stream so I can upload this part. And then we'll come back and do a second part of this. I don't think anyone's here watching live because this isn't the most thrilling thing to watch live streamed. But hopefully, if you're watching this back on YouTube, going through this is somewhat helpful. Some way, and let me know in the comments below if there's anything I'm getting wrong, because it'd be great to get some corrections on stuff, because I'm ultimately trying to play this game as well, but also put some good news out there about it. So yeah, thanks for watching up to this point. We'll be back for round 2, and actually we'll be able to do this in 2 rounds because we're halfway through the rules already. We're on page 22 and I think there's about 40 pages of, so we've done half of it. We've got the other half to go. Right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers all.